Let's talk about the best dads in history. But before I do that, I want to make a disclaimer. If you're a dad who works hard for your family to support them, you love your children, you make sure they're safe and protected, a dad who will fight a bear or a gorilla for some reason, you're already the best dad in history, okay? So let's make that clear before I go over my list. First on the list is the father that inspired the national holiday Father's Day, William Jackson Smart. William was a single father and a Civil War veteran that took care of his 6 kids by himself, and he left such a big impression on his daughter Sonora that she advocated to churches and politicians to make Father's Day a national holiday. She got the idea back in 1909 while she was celebrating Mother's Day. That's where it occurred to her, why don't we celebrate and honor our fathers as well, because of how good her father was. So I was reading an article about the story. It's really interesting. I'll link it in the description, but I'm gonna put the article on the screen so you can go through it with me. So Sonora wanted the day to be celebrated on June 5th, which was the day of her father's birthday. However, the church couldn't make the service on time, so they did it on June 19th, which was the 3rd Sunday of the month of June, which is how it is celebrated now. That means that the first service to honor fathers was in June 1910. However, it didn't become a national holiday until 1972, when the President Richard Nixon signed a congressional resolution making it an official national holiday. So it took Sonora 62 years to accomplish that goal. How exactly was it celebrated back in 1910? What they did before was pass around red and white roses and honor living fathers and fathers that had passed away. So the red roses signified a father that was alive, and the white roses represented a father that had passed away. So as you can see, flowers were used also to celebrate fathers. And that's how Father's Day came to be. Second on the list, the Roman Emperor Antoninus Pius. He was an emperor from 138 to 161 AD, and he was considered one of the 5 good emperors of that time. And you can find information online of how he was, the things he did as an emperor, but that's not what I want to cover today. I want to focus on how he was as a father. He was the father of Marcus Artelius, who was also an emperor after Antoninus' death. So the way we know that Antoninus was a great father is because Marcus wrote a journal after Antoninus had passed away, and he wrote pages just describing how great of a man his father was. And keep in mind, Antoninus wasn't even Marcus' biological father. He was his adopted father, but you wouldn't have known by the way he describes him. So I've been reading through Meditations. I'm on my 3rd chapter, but on the 1st chapter, which so far is my favorite, he described what he learned from his family, from his friends, and especially from his father, which is the reason why I selected Marcus' father as the 2nd best dad in history. So this is a quote from Marcus' journal about his father. He said, "In my father I observe his meekness, his constancy without wavering in those things, how free from all vanity he carried himself in a matter of honor and dignity." In summary, he described his father, as I mentioned, humble, steady, honest man that valued honor. He was hardworking, patient, and careful in making decisions, always listening to others without judgment. He was consistent in his actions. Overall, a balanced, disciplined, and respectable man with a strong, steady soul. I think that's a great way to describe a father, saying that he had a strong soul. I think that's amazing. If you agree with my list so far, make sure to let me know in the comments. So before we talk about the 3rd and last dad on my list, and I know the list might be a little bit short, but I just wanted to select fathers that cover what I think are the best core qualities that a good father should have, and I'm gonna talk about that later, so you understand why these 3 dads were selected. Also, at the end of the video, I'm going to share what ChatGPT said is the best dad in history, and believe me, you want to hear who it is. Alright, so the 3rd best dad in history goes to Yesuge Batar, the father of Temujin, which is the real name of Genghis Khan. And let me explain why I chose him as the 3rd best dad in history. Even though he was poisoned and passed away when Temujin was 9 years old, he laid the foundation that Temujin needed to become Genghis Khan, which created the largest empire in history. So what exactly does this foundation entail? Basically, there's 3 things that Yesuge taught Temujin. The First thing were tribe politics. Yesuge was the leader of the clan Borjigin, the powerful clan among the Mongol tribes. Temujin learned about diplomacy, also how to resolve problems within the tribe, when to be flexible, and when to take action for the survival of the clan. The second thing that Temujin learned was loyalty. This was an indirect lesson that he learned when his father was poisoned by a rival tribe. This was deeply internalized by Genghis Khan, where he learned that trust is not assumed but earned. And he applied this to running his empire. He ran a merit-based empire where he rewarded loyalty and severely punished betrayal. And to put this into perspective, do you guys remember Game of Thrones? Khal Drogo, where he poured the melted gold on Khaleesi's brother? Guess who did it first? Genghis Khan once poured melted silver into the eyes and ears of an official who got greedy and tried to take some of his riches. The third lesson that Yesuge taught Temujin was the nomadic and Mongolian way of life that included horseback riding, archery, hunting, and herding. Without these skills, Temujin wouldn't have survived after his father was poisoned. His family and himself were persecuted to make sure he wouldn't challenge the rival clans. But little did they know that not only would he conquer those tribal clans, he will also conquer almost half the world. And if you're thinking, there's no way Temujin at 9 years old would have learned all of that to become that big of an emperor. Well, I disagree. Remember first that this was the 12th century, which was a very different time back then. Second, I got the chance to visit Mongolia, and besides being a beautiful country, the thing that impressed me the most were their people, especially the children in the countryside. I remember seeing a little girl in the countryside. She had really red, bright cheeks from the harsh weather, but she was in a mountain herding the cattle, like making sure they were all in line, and she handled the cattle better than I could have ever done in my life. Another thing that I saw was during their festival called Naram. They have a competition of horseback riding, and one of the categories are children that look like they could barely walk, maybe 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. They were riding horses in the wild, not in a circle, in a closed area. It was in the wild, riding for hours as fast as they can so they can come back and win the competition. So believe me when I tell you, Temujin at 9 years old, he learned a lot from his father. And this is why Yesuge is the third father on my list. But why did I choose these 3 fathers to begin with? I did it based on these 3 core qualities that I think makes a good father. And let me know if you disagree with these or if you think there are other qualities that I should have considered. The first one is reliability, and I give that spot to William Jackson Smart. Even he became a widower, a single father in the late 1800s, he took care of his 6 children so well that his daughter thought we should honor fathers as well, which created the national holiday Father's Day. The second core quality will be nurturing. I know when we say nurturing, we think about mothers, but fathers' nurturing is very unique and important. I give this spot to Yesuge Batar as the father of Temujin Genghis Khan because of all the skill he taught his son at such a young age that led to the largest empire in history. We can say that Yesuge's legacy is that even though he couldn't be alive to see his son's greatness, he shaped his son's worldview and prepared his skills in a way that his son was able to achieve his goals. And don't get me wrong, I'm not promoting conquering other countries. That was a different time in the 12th century. So I think conquering half the world would have been something that in the 12th century his parents will have been very proud. So the third core quality will be emotional intelligence, and I'll give that to Antoninus Pius because of the way his son described him in his journal as having a strong soul, someone who thought things thoroughly, managed his own emotions, listened to others without judgment, and basically for being a good example to Marcus. I think his father was a great example that helped Marcus have a successful empire, because one of the things that Marcus wrote in his journal is how to remain calm through the wars he was fighting. And without the emotional intelligence he learned from his father, I think that would have been a lot harder for him to handle. And as I promised, I will share ChatGPT's selection of the best father in history. Drums please. So ChatGPT chose Joseph, the father of Jesus Christ. And to be honest, this was a little bit surprising for me, mainly because of the reason why ChatGPT selected him. It was because of the faith that Joseph had to raise Jesus Christ. And that got me thinking, like, what does it really mean by that? Because the faith that Mary was saying the truth, that it was a divine pregnancy. Jesus Christ was the Son of God. Like, what did ChatGPT really mean by saying he was the best dad? Because he had faith to raise Jesus Christ as his son. So what do you think about that? Do you agree with ChatGPT? Do you agree with my choices? Let me know in the comments. But either way, I wanted to make this video so we don't forget the quiet sacrifices that fathers do. So for all those amazing dads out there, happy Father's Day, and I hope you have a great day.